Last week, a friend from abroad watched me cook dinner for 2 hours for just three people, and she looked at me like I was absolutely insane. And she was like, "Why don't you just order something?" And honestly, that question is this whole video because there are things Italians do differently, but not because we're stubborn or old fashioned or romantic like people like to assume. We do them because somewhere along the way we decided that how you spend your time matters as much as what you get done. So today I want to show you four of these things, not as a list of cute Italian quirks, but as a way of living that I think the world has quietly lost and it's now trying to find its way back to. Let's get into it. The first thing, and quite frankly, the foundation for everything else in this video, is that Italians try to live slowly. Not because we're lazy, we're not. Italy runs hospitals, ports, fashion houses, big brands, tech houses, car factories. We work super hard. But there's a difference between working super hard and treat every minute like it owes your productivity. In a lot of places, I feel like slowness has become something you have to justify. You take a long lunch and you feel guilty. You sit at a cafe for an hour without your laptop open and you feel like you're wasting time. In Italy, that guilt is much weaker. A long lunch is not wasted time. It's literally the point of the day. Sitting in a cafe watching people go by isn't procrastination. It's an activity in itself. I'm not saying we've got it all figured out. Italians complain about pace of life too, especially younger generations that live in big cities. But the cultural default, like the thing you're not expected to apologize for, is definitely slowness. And that changes everything downstream. How you eat, how you cook, how you shop, and how you rest. Which brings me to the next one. Italians cook at home a lot. Not just on weekends, not just on special occasions. We cook at home for most days and most meals. And what is actually interesting is the why. It's not really about saving money, even though I must admit it is a very nice side effect, is that a home cooked meal here in Italy is considered the default mode way of eating. And for most people, eating out is an occasion, is the exception and not the rule. And think about how different that mindset is. In a lot of countries, cooking dinner every night is treated like a skill, almost like an achievement, something you have to post about on social media, something that feels like impressive for most people. In Italy, not knowing how to make a good plate of pasta by the time you're 20 is considered very unusual. Like something must be wrong with you. And there's also a beautiful generational thread that runs through it because recipes here get handed down. Usually you won't find recipes written in a book, but these recipes are taught hands-on, which is exactly what my grandma did with me. Like some of her most infamous cakes, I learned from her while watching her cooking those cakes and as she was telling me what to put inside. Some typical phrases are like, "This is how my mother made it. This is how her aunt made it. This is how her grandmother made it." Cooking becomes a way of staying connected to family, even when nobody's saying sentimental things out loud. It's just this is literally how we eat. And because cooking happens so often, most of the times it stays simple, honoring a tradition of home cooked meals from one generation to the other. Italian home cooking isn't about complicated techniques. It's literally 5 or 6 honest ingredients treated with respect and repeated for decades. And that simplicity is literally because it's daily and not despite it. Which leads me to the obvious question. If ingredients matter that much, where do they actually come from? And this is the part that generally shocks a lot of visitors. So in many places in the world, the relationship with food looks like supermarket, cart, home. One stop that is anonymous and efficient. In Italy, especially outside of biggest cities, there's still often a more direct line between you and the person that grew your food. You might buy your vegetables from a stand where the actual farmer is standing there waving to you and asking, "How was your dinner last night?" You also might know by name the guy who pressed your olives to make gorgeous olive oil, or the family whose vineyard your wine actually comes from. There are still towns and there are still people where people drive out to a farm once in a season to fill up jugs of olive oil straight from the producer. This also happens where I live in the northern part with cheeses and milk. I remember my grandfather used to kind of like drive me to this, it's called cascina here in Italy, and he would buy, I don't know, maybe like 3, 4, even 10 kilos of parmesan directly from the farmer who made the cheese. And we usually came home with this big, it's like forma of parmigiano. And I remember, like, I was telling my grandma, why don't you just buy it at the supermarket? And my granddad, and he was telling me, it's not the same, honey. And this isn't some marketing idea from farm to table. It's literally older than the phrase. It's just how food shopping worked for generations. And a meaningful numbers of Italian never switched away from that. And I honestly found that so beautiful. And it also changes the way you cook too. Because when you buy tomatoes from the person who actually grew the vegetable, picked it up last week and in season, you actually don't need a complicated recipe because the ingredient itself is so full of life and flavor that you actually just need the ingredient itself and some salt, pepper, olive oil, and basil. That's one of life's most precious moments you'll ever find here in Italy. The ingredient is doing the work, it's not the technique. So slow living shapes how we cook shapes what we buy, and what we buy keeps us connected to actual people, not just a supply chain. Which brings me to the idea that I think ties this whole video together, an idea that's 2000 years old. So the ancient Romans had a word, negotium, literally not leisure. It's where we get the word negotiate, business, shop. In Italian, it will be negozio because negotium basically just means business. It's like obligations, work, money. It's the stuff you have to do. But the Romans also had a word for the opposite, otium. Otium wasn't laziness. It wasn't doing nothing and scrolling on your phone in a wasted guilt shame pattern. Otium was purposeful rest. It was time spent on thinking, conversation, reading, walking, and being with the people you love, and then can spark new and beautiful ideas, simply existing without an agenda. The Romans considered otium essential as the opposite of work. It is not a reward you earn after you've worked, it's a necessary counterweight to it. Negotium without otium in the Roman world made you smaller as a person. You were busy but shallow. You actually needed both. Work gave you purpose, otium gave you depth. And honestly, a lot of what just described in this video, the slow pace of living, the 2-hour lunch on a Sunday, a market visit instead of a supermarket dash, a beautiful passeggiata in the evening or in the afternoon with your loved ones, is literally just otium 2000 years later in the everyday Italian life. And let me get this clear, it's not that Italians don't work, it's that we never fully accepted the idea that negotium should win every single hour of the day. There's still this old stubborn culture instincts that says rest, conversation, and a slow meal. These are not the things you do after a meaningful life. These are a meaningful life. One of my friends told me a couple of days ago, Americans live to work, Italians work to live. And that's kind of like in a little bit twisted way, but is literally how things are. So when my friend asked me, why didn't I just order dinner instead of cooking for 2 hours? That's the real answer for me. It was never about cooking the pasta. It's literally about choosing otium over negotium every single day, even in small ways. Buying from a person instead of a system, cooking instead of consuming, and sitting a little longer that you need. And none of this is exclusive to Italy. You don't need to live here to do any of it, but I think Italy still gives you the permission to do all of this without the guilt part. And that permission is honestly the rarest ingredients of all. If this kind of slow, intentional way of living is something you want more of in your life, even in small doses, let me know in the comments. I'd love to know how you build little pockets of otium into your week. And if you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, as I'm your internet's favorite Italian lifestyle curator. I'll see you in the next one. Ciao!